The wind smelled faintly of salt and rain as Clara stood before the old stone bridge. It arched low over the tide, worn smooth by centuries, glowing faintly in the amber hush of sunset. The town behind her was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that holds its breath. She raised her easel, brushing a lock of hair from her eyes, and whispered to herself, "Just before the light changes." But as her brush touched the canvas, the water below rippled, though no wind moved. Something shifted beneath the surface, a shimmer like a reflection that didn't belong to her or the sky. For a moment, she thought she heard breathing, slow, deliberate, and close. The sea exhaled, and the bridge seemed to tremble. A voice in her mind, soft as the fading light, asked, "What if beauty remembers every soul that gazes too long?" Clara found the lighthouse long after the sun had gone. Its lantern turned lazily through the fog, painting the stones below in pale light. She knocked on the weathered door, half expecting silence. Instead, it opened to a man with eyes the color of sea glass, Elias Thorne. His voice carried the rhythm of the tide. "You're the painter," he said, not asking, but knowing. Inside, the air smelled of oil and salt. Maps of currents lined the walls, drawn in trembling hands. Elias poured her tea that tasted faintly of smoke. "Don't paint the bridge after sunset," he murmured. "It doesn't wait for darkness. It comes when the sun begins to bleed." Clara's hand froze on the cup. "What comes?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. He only looked toward the horizon where the light had already begun to fade. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The inn was small, and the window faced the sea. The tide sang softly below, but every few breaths she heard something else. A low hum that didn't belong to wind or wave. She rose and looked outside. The bridge shimmered faintly, though the moon was veiled. For an instant, she thought she saw a figure walking beneath it. Barefoot, cloaked in shadow, the figure stopped, lifted its head toward her window, and vanished as though swallowed by the mist. She touched the glass, her heart thrumming with questions. Somewhere out there, beauty was alive, and it was looking back. The next morning, Clara found Elias by the shore, mending a torn fishing net. The air was sharp and silver with mist. "You saw it, didn't you?" he said without looking up. She hesitated, then nodded. He tied a knot, slow and deliberate. "The bridge remembers who stands beneath it. The longer you watch, the closer it draws." He looked at her, eyes weary but kind. "It doesn't take souls. It takes what they love most and shows it back, wrong." Clara knelt beside him, the wind tangling her hair. "Then why stay?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Because something has to watch us." By afternoon, the town began to stir. Fishermen patching boats, children chasing gulls, an old woman laying flowers by the seawall. Clara wandered the market, sketchbook in hand. She asked about the bridge, but voices grew quiet. One merchant crossed himself. Another muttered, "It's not the bridge you should fear. It's what it remembers." When the sun dipped lower, Clara walked once more to the edge of the tide. The stones glistened like gold coins under the sinking light. Somewhere deep below, she thought she saw the flicker of her own reflection, smiling when she wasn't. The fog rolled in thicker that evening, blurring the line between sea and sky. Clara stood on the cliffs beside Elias, both watching the horizon dissolve into molten gold. "You said it remembers?" she began quietly. Elias didn't turn. "The bridge was built on a promise," he said. "Long ago, when the sea took half this town, a woman begged it to stop. She offered it everything she had, her memories, her face, her name, and the sea agreed." Clara's pulse quickened. What happened to her? Elias's voice was little more than a sigh. "She became what waits under the bridge. The sea never forgets kindness or hunger." Clara's fingers tightened around her sketchbook. The tide below shimmered faintly, as though listening. That night, Elias led Clara into the lighthouse's lower chamber. The walls were lined with bottles filled with seawater, each glowing faintly blue. "Every storm leaves something behind," he murmured. A whisper, a memory, sometimes a face. He lifted one bottle and held it toward her. Inside, a small shimmer moved, like light trapped in glass. "People say the monster takes shape from those who forget what they love," he said. "That's why I stay, to remember." Clara felt the bottle's chill seep into her hands. The light within flickered, and for the briefest instant, it looked like her own reflection smiling back. As dawn approached, the storm came. Waves rose against the cliffs, and the lighthouse moaned like a living thing. Clara watched from the window, her reflection flickering in the glass. She saw herself, and then another self, behind it, eyes black with tidewater, smiling in the dark. A crack of thunder silenced thought. Elias called out, "Don't look too long," but she couldn't look away. The reflection moved on its own, lips parting as if to speak. The glass fogged with breath that wasn't hers. Then it whispered her name, Clara. Not from the mirror, but from beneath the sound of the storm itself. When morning broke, the sea lay still again, as though nothing had happened. Elias brewed tea without speaking. Clara sat across from him, pale, her thoughts running like tidewater through sand. "It called my name," she said finally. Elias stopped stirring. "Then it knows you." His eyes softened, full of sorrow. "Once it knows you, it will show you what you seek, but never what you hope to find." He slid a small key across the table. "Below the lighthouse is a passage to the bridge's heart. Go if you must, but not when the sun bleeds. Promise me." Clara said nothing. Promises are fragile things when curiosity begins to ache. That evening, Clara walked the shoreline alone. The tide whispered, gentle and knowing. She held the key in her palm, its metal warm from her touch. The bridge waited ahead, the air painted in amber and rose. She told herself she only wanted to see the stones, to hear the water hum. But as she stepped closer, the hum deepened into something like a voice, low, melodic, familiar. "You came," it said. She stopped breathing. Beneath the bridge, the reflection moved again, not mirroring her now, but reaching out as if from another world entirely. The next day, the air was still, too still. No gulls cried, no waves broke. The sea seemed to wait. Clara carried her easel to the bridge, the brass key resting in her pocket like a heartbeat. She chose her place at the edge of the tide, where the gold shimmer met the shadow beneath the arch. Her brush moved in soft strokes, painting what she saw. The light, the moss, the curve of stone. Yet with every stroke, the reflection changed. A figure began to appear on the canvas, faint at first, then clearer. A woman kneeling in the water, hair flowing like seaweed, eyes closed as if in prayer. Clara whispered, "Who are you?" The wind replied in a single hush, "Remember." By late afternoon, the tide crept higher, licking at Clara's boots. She barely noticed. The woman in her painting had opened her eyes, pale, glassy eyes that seemed to see her and through her. When the last rays of sunlight brushed the bridge, the air pulsed. The reflection in the water began to shimmer again, aligning perfectly with the figure she had painted. Clara's breath caught. It wasn't paint anymore. It was movement. Slow, deliberate, alive. The figure lifted its head, mirroring Clara's posture exactly, and when she blinked, the woman in the painting smiled. Elias found her still painting when dusk began to fall. "Clara!" he shouted across the sand. She didn't hear him. Her strokes were wild now, desperate, as if she were racing against the setting sun. The figure in the water was clearer than ever, her face a mirror of Clara's own. Elias grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back. The moment he did, The reflection beneath the bridge broke apart, scattering, like shattered glass. "You look too long," he said, trembling. Clara stared at her hands, streaked not with paint, but something dark, glimmering and wet. She looked back. Clara whispered, "And she knows my name." That night, Clara dreamed of the bridge breathing. Stone shifting like ribs. Water curling like lungs. She stood beneath it in the dream, barefoot. Her reflection waiting with open arms. "You painted me," it said, voice like rain. "Now I can paint you." She woke to the smell of salt and iron. Her canvas was still wet, but she hadn't touched it. The painted version of herself now stood closer to the surface, arm outstretched, fingertips pressed against the inside of the frame, as if she could step through. By morning, she made her decision. The key in her pocket burned like sunlight. Elias begged her not to go, but Clara only smiled, calm and resolute. "I have to know who she is," she said. As the sun began to set once more, she descended the rocky path beneath the lighthouse, finding the hidden door it unlocked. A narrow stair spiraling down into darkness that smelled of salt and memory. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. When she reached the bottom, she saw it, a passage beneath the bridge, the ceiling alive with reflected light, and in the center of the water waiting, her reflection, smiling, hand outstretched. The tunnel opened into a chamber bathed in twilight gold, though no sun could reach so deep. Water lapped against smooth stone, whispering voices that weren't made for air. Clara stepped forward, her lantern trembling. Across the pool, her reflection rose, not from glass, but from the living tide. The woman looked exactly like her, yet older in the eyes, softer around the mouth, like a memory worn by time. "You've come back," the reflection said, voice echoing with both sorrow and longing. "Back," Clara whispered. The other smiled. "The sea remembers what the world forgets." And as she spoke, the water began to glow brighter, revealing faces beneath. Hundreds, all turned upward, watching. Clara knelt beside the water, heart drumming in her throat. "Who are they?" she asked. The reflection tilted her head. "The ones who listened too long. The bridge doesn't devour. It keeps. Every soul that found beauty here remains part of its song." Clara looked down, and one of the faces, a woman's, peaceful and young, smiled faintly as the tide brushed her cheek. "And me," she whispered. "You," said the reflection, "still have time to forget." A tear slipped down Clara's face, disappearing into the glow. "I don't want to forget." The reflection's expression softened, almost human. "Then remember what the sea remembers. Everything you've ever loved." Elias's voice broke through the silence above, calling her name. Distant, desperate, "Clara!" The sound rippled through the chamber, scattering the light. The reflection's expression darkened. "He shouldn't be here," she whispered. The water around them churned, faces flickering like candles in wind. "Go," Clara urged, but Elias's silhouette was already at the tunnel's mouth, lantern blazing. "Step away," he shouted. The reflection turned toward him, eyes blazing blue. "You never learned," she said. "You who watch, but never see." Elias raised the lantern higher, its flame flaring white. "Then show me," he said. The chamber erupted in light. When the light dimmed, Elias was gone. Only his lantern remained, floating atop the still water. Clara sank to her knees. "What did you do?" she gasped. The reflection's voice trembled. "He asked to see. The sea grants every question an answer." Clara touched the lantern, watching its flame flicker once before dying. "Where is he?" she whispered. The reflection stepped closer. "Everywhere the tide reaches." For a moment, Clara saw him. His face among the countless others below, eyes open, peaceful as if dreaming. You could stay too. The reflection murmured, "No pain, no time, only remembrance." Clara looked into her reflection's eyes and saw not a monster, but a mirror of all she had forgotten, of all she had once been. The bridge wasn't a curse, it was a keeper. The sea didn't hunger, it remembered. Slowly, Clara reached out her hand. The reflection met it halfway, fingertips touching. The water pulsed with warmth. "If I stay," Clara whispered, "will I become you?" The reflection smiled faintly. "No, you'll become what you remember." Outside, the sun touched the horizon, and golden light poured through the cracks in the stone, flooding the chamber with radiance. Then the tide rose. The tide cradled Clara like an embrace, neither cold nor warm, simply endless. The reflection's hand slid from hers, dissolving into streams of light that danced across the chamber walls. She found herself drifting deeper, where the glow softened into blue. Images surfaced like dreams, the bridge being built stone by stone, laughter echoing across the waves, a woman standing at its heart, whispering to the sea. "Take what I am," the voice said, "and let them live." Clara's breath caught. The voice was hers, or something older within her. The bridge hadn't taken her name, it had kept it. Around her, the water shimmered with memory of every sunset ever seen, of every soul that couldn't let go. Clara awoke upon the water's edge, the tide lapping gently against her coat. The lantern lay beside her, unlit, its glass cracked but whole. Above, the bridge gleamed faintly under the dawn. Quiet, ancient, breathing. She rose, dazed, her skin carrying the scent of salt and something like starlight. In the distance, the lighthouse still stood, though its flame was gone. She heard Elias's voice then, soft as wind. "The sea remembers kindness." Clara smiled faintly. "And so will I." The morning sun touched the stones, and for a moment, the reflection beneath her feet smiled back. Not haunting, but grateful. Later that day, Clara climbed the cliffs above the bridge. She opened her sketchbook. Every page that once held her paintings was blank now, save for one. The image of the reflection remained, eyes closed, peaceful. She traced the lines with her fingertips, and as she did, the page grew damp with seawater. "So, it wasn't a curse," she whispered. "It was memory." Behind her, the waves shimmered. Somewhere within them, she thought she saw Elias, not lost, but woven into the light itself, part of the tide's eternal song. The wind carried his voice again, soft and certain. "Remember for us." By evening, the townsfolk gathered near the seawall, whispering of strange lights beneath the bridge the night before. Clara said nothing. She stood apart, her gaze fixed on the water. When a child asked her what she had seen, she simply replied, "The sea remembers." The old woman who tended the flowers nodded knowingly and placed a white bloom at Clara's feet. As the sun began to set, the water shimmered once more, not with fear, but with gentle radiance, as though the bridge itself sighed in relief. Clara closed her eyes and listened. The tide hummed her name, and many others, like a lullaby. That night, Clara returned once more to the bridge. The tide was calm, the air warm with the scent of seaweed and dusk. She knelt and touched the water's surface. It glowed faintly under her fingertips. "You can rest now," she whispered. The reflection appeared, smiling. Not a ghost, not a monster, but something sacred. As the first stars began to bloom above, Clara dipped her brush into the golden tide and painted one final stroke upon the bridge's stone. The glow deepened, spreading outward until sky and sea were one. "Who are we?" she murmured. In the quiet between heartbeats, the water shimmered and whispered back, "Remember." Days passed quietly, or perhaps the same day folded into itself again and again. Clara painted from dawn to dusk, each stroke softer than the last, as if the sea itself guided her hand. The townsfolk spoke her name in whispers. Some said she had been touched by the bridge, others that she was part of its spell. But Clara felt no fear now, only the gentle ache of belonging. Each evening, as the sun dipped low, she walked to the water's edge and waited for the golden shimmer. The reflection always came, smiling, silent, patient. It no longer mimicked her movements. It simply watched, as if waiting for her to decide what came next. One morning, she found her paintings changed again. The scenes no longer showed the bridge or the sea. They showed her, standing where the reflection once was, smiling from beneath the surface. "It's calling," she whispered. She packed her things slowly, leaving the cracked lantern and the final sketch on the windowsill. The tide was already rising when she reached the archway. The reflection stood waist-deep in gold, arms open. "You don't have to come back," Clara said. The reflection shook her head. "You never left." And as the first wave touched Clara's feet, warmth spread through her like sunlight sinking into stone. As she waded into the water, the world grew quiet, not silent, but full of a deeper hum, like the heartbeat of the sea. Every step she took dissolved the edges of herself. The salt on her lips, the weight of her coat, the chill of the tide. When she reached her reflection, the air around them shimmered. "What happens if I cross?" Clara asked softly. "You don't cross," the reflection replied. "You return." Then, gently, she pressed her palm to Clara's chest, and the world folded inward, gold and blue and endless. When the tide receded, the beach was empty. Only Clara's easel remained, half buried in the sand. The townsfolk searched for her for days, then weeks. Some claimed to see her walking the bridge at sunset, her figure glowing faintly in the golden light. Others swore her laughter could be heard beneath the waves. The old woman at the seawall told the children. She remembered too much, and the sea loves those who remember. They left flowers by the water's edge, white and trembling, and each bloom drifted out to sea as though carried by invisible hands. That night, the sea was calm. The moon hung low, painting silver trails across the bridge. Beneath the surface, something shimmered, not frightening, not lonely, but alive. Clara opened her eyes within the water, her reflection beside her, no longer separate. Together they drifted among the memories that glowed like stars. Faces smiled as they passed, Elias among them, radiant and free. Clara reached toward the surface, her fingertips brushing the underside of the tide. The golden shimmer pulsed once, twice, then settled into peace. The bridge above stilled, holding its breath between worlds, waiting for the next sunset to remember her name. Years slipped quietly through the tides. The town endured, rebuilt and learned not to speak the bridge's name aloud. Yet at every sunset, when the light turned the sea to honey and the air shimmered like a breath on glass, the people paused. Some said it was only the light. Others swore they saw a figure walking beneath the arch, her steps slow, her hands tracing the stone as if it still remembered her touch. The bridge itself seemed gentler now, less burdened, more awake. The fishermen began to call it the Keeper's Crossing. None knew why, but sometimes when the water was still, they heard humming, a lullaby carried on the tide. One evening, a storm rolled in from the horizon, wild and black, but when it reached the bridge, it broke apart like mist. Lightning forked above, thunder rolled, and yet the water beneath remained golden, untouched. The townsfolk gathered at their windows, whispering her name. They said the woman beneath the bridge raised her hand toward the sky, and the storm bowed before her. When the clouds cleared, the air smelled of salt and rain, and a single beam of sunlight fell upon the sea. Warm, unearthly, like a hand laid gently upon the town's heart. The sea remembers, they said. Always. Seasons turned. Children grew. The old passed on, and still the bridge remained, patient, watchful. Some nights, a painter's easel would appear on the shore, untouched by tide or time, as though waiting for hands that would never return. The townsfolk stopped fearing the glow beneath the water. They began to leave offerings instead. Flowers, sketches, whispers of names they didn't want forgot. And every now and then someone swore they heard footsteps on the bridge, soft and rhythmic, echoing like a heartbeat across the waves. Far beneath the bridge, in the quiet between tides, Clara drifts. Around her, memories flow like ribbons of light. Faces, voices, laughter, sorrow, all blending into the endless hum of the sea. She is not lost nor bound. She is part of it now, the stillness that holds the world's forgotten beauty. Sometimes she feels the pull of a new soul standing above, curious and gentle, and she smiles. Remember, she whispers through the current, her voice soft as dusk. But never be afraid. The water ripples once, carrying her words toward the setting sun. When the sun falls each evening, the bridge hums with the memory of light. The water shivers once, then stills, holding its breath as the first star appears. Somewhere beneath, Clara's reflection moves with the tide, not as a ghost, but as a promise. The sea glows faintly, whispering its lullaby across the sleeping town. The bridge remains, timeless and tender, waiting for the next soul who dares to paint its beauty. And as the last of daylight fades, the question returns, quiet as a heartbeat. What if time remembered what we tried to forget?